Across the span of a decade, Bungie released Halo Combat Evolved, Halo 2, Halo 3, Halo 3 ODST, and Halo Reach. 5 full Halo games between 2001 and 2010, an entire saga that defined Xbox as a brand. Now let's look at Halo from 2016 to today. What has the new studio produced in the last decade? A remake of the original Halo, and one campaign built from a single level of the original game stretched out to roughly 10 hours. That's it. That's genuinely embarrassing for one of Microsoft's flagship franchises. Of course, that ignores the period between 2011 and 2015, because to be fair to 343 Industries, they were actually incredibly productive during those years. They shipped Halo Combat Evolved Anniversary, Halo 4, Halo 2 Anniversary, and Halo 5 Guardians, 2 brand new mainline games alongside 2 substantial remasters in just 4 years, which only makes Halo Studios' output since then all the more concerning. The new Halo campaign Evolved does at least include 3 entirely original missions in the form of Operation Meteorite. Yeah, you heard that right, only 3 new levels in 5 years. You may be wondering why they've bothered. Maybe it's simply an incentive to tempt long-time fans back with something new, or more likely a litmus test with fans to see whether Halo Studios can create a story and levels that actually feel like Halo. So that's what I want to find out today. We're going to go through the 3 levels of Operation Meteorite and see if the first original Halo content in half a decade was worth the wait.
Now you ready to get to it?
Operation Meteorite opens with a title crawl akin to Star Wars, actually very akin to Star Wars, down to the starry background and blue text. Other creators have rightly pointed out that Halo 3 ODST also opens with a title crawl, so it's not a new concept to the franchise. It made sense in that game because we're thrown into the middle of Halo 2, and being a spin-off game, it needs to quickly establish the situation to people who may not have played Halo 2, if you can believe it. I think Operation Meteorite also justifies having a title crawl, because this is set way before Combat Evolved. There needs to be some context as to when and where we are before the mission starts. I think the main issue is the presentation of it. In ODST, the opening crawl is presented as bold text against the backdrop of a rainy sky looking down on the city of New Mombasa, from the perspective of an ODST that will soon be dropping down into the abyss below. It sets the stakes effectively with strong, impactful sentences like, "We are losing."
Oh, chills. Literal chills.
The text is also given texture and is angled to make it look more dynamic. Meteorite opts for a lowercase font and is positioned like you're reading text from a book. If this was the angle they wanted to go with, why not set this title crawl on a monitor from Johnson's computer, en route to the location, getting the mission debrief and then naturally panning out to reveal him. As it currently looks, there are no clues outside of the text as to where you are or the tone to expect. Or is the Star Wars inspiration meant to imply a wacky space adventure? Because that's not really what we end up with either. We learn that the United Nations Space Command is looking to fight back against the alien alliance known as the Covenant by finding the location of their homeworld and going straight to the heart of their empire. They believe they'll find this location at a research ship currently overlooking the glassed planet named Promise, and this research ship is where our operation takes place. The premise is nice and simple and allows the writers to throw in twists and turns in the story without overcomplicating it, so I'm glad with the story they're going with. We then open on the glassed planet and pan to the ship, showing the devastation the Covenant are capable of, which is an effective visual. We then cut inside the ship as we see a Covenant dropship approach, the Jackals and Grunts opening it to find a Master Chief-sized surprise inside for them.
Boo.
I do think this cutscene's pacing is a bit off. Why do we need to see the grunts open every compartment before finding Chief? Let's cut to the chase here and have it open up empty, then Chief pop out from hiding. Because there's no music during the scene, there's no tension being built up to Chief's reveal, so it just comes across as boring. Starting in media res and getting Chief onto the ship as soon as possible was a good move. However, we can assume Chief hijacked a ship and flew it here to remain undetected until he was on board. What I'm not a fan of is the reactions to his appearance. The grunts have always been comic relief with their strangely cute voices and wholesome attitudes, but the way that the jackal and grunts run away looks too comical for the tone we've established here. Can you imagine playing ODST after that title crawl and then dropping into New Mombasa to find the Covenant joking around and running away, squawking at each other? It removes their threat and tension from the story instantly, and now the devastation of the glassed planet feels more like just a pretty backdrop to the level than a visual to show the Covenant's strength. Chief's first line being "boo" is a direct reference to the same line in Halo 2. It made sense in that scene because Chief had just been teleported into High Charity and caught the Covenant off guard. Saying "boo" achieved something in the narrative as well because the grunt panics and throws his needler in the air, giving Chief a weapon. In Campaign Evolved, he is already holding a weapon and has the grunt at gunpoint. There's no reason for him to say anything here. What's even stranger is him just letting the grunts and jackal run off. Why is he hesitating here? This is a covert mission where only he and Johnson have been sent there. The goal here is to be stealthy and remain undetected, so why let these guys go where they can alert the others? Especially when the cutscene ends and we end up killing them anyway. Chief lowers his weapon, then jumps off the ship where we transition into our first bit of gameplay, clearing the room of enemies. After we eliminate them, we're told to walk back to the ship awkwardly to start another cutscene. It's like the game let me lift my controller for a few seconds only to put it back down again. I don't think the plotting here is bad, however. Having Chief clear the deck of the ship so it's safe for Johnson to come out makes perfect sense, but either do it as a cutscene or do it all in gameplay. Doing both disrupts the flow too much and feels awkward. But now we get the reveal of Sergeant Johnson, who is listening to music. And then his first line is asking Chief why he couldn't have saved some enemies for him. I get that this is probably a joke that Chief was instructed to clear the deck first, but it doesn't half confuse me. Would it not have made more sense for Chief to launch into action immediately after being discovered? Then Johnson pops out straight after and complains that Chief didn't leave any for him. That makes sense, and I feel like whoever made these cutscenes completely lost the intention of the scene on paper by making Johnson look like he was waiting. That's not what the dialogue here implies at all. I just want to say how much I love this one shot where it pans around Chief to Johnson holding up his new Gauss rifle. Along with the rock music in the background, this shot is probably the only one so far to have the right pacing and energy to match the direction. Johnson then asks if he's ready to get to it, and look, I know we're still in the opening minutes, but again I have to mention the direction here doesn't match the script. Johnson taking his time to take out the stanchion and admire it, only to ask Chief if he's ready, should be played as a joke from Chief. Chief was already walking away ready to get going. He then turns around because Johnson is holding them up, getting out his new gizmo. Surely it should be Chief saying, "Are you quite finished?" before they get going. Unless the direction here is that Johnson is just ignoring what Chief is doing altogether, which is how it comes across in the scene. Alright, now we've gone through that scene, I've got a spare 5 minutes, so I'm going to do a quick edit of how I would shorten this down and make it flow a bit quicker. See what you think of my edit.
Just couldn't save any from me, could you? ready to get to it.
In this version, I was able to cut it down from over 3 minutes down to just 45 seconds. I don't think you lose any information from doing that. Some of the cringy lines and awkward pauses are cut out, and now Johnson's line about saving some for him makes more sense because the grunt just ran away. Then he pops out, not waiting in the ship for 5 minutes while we clear it. Cutting back to the gameplay, Chief explains that the map they were given is accurate, so they have a good idea which way to go, quickly establishing that our goal here is to obtain the nav data from the ship. Seems simple enough. We now have to wait a couple of seconds by the door while Johnson opens it. Johnson remarks that they'll be in and out before dinner, and Chief responds by saying that Johnson is always hungry, which is a really cringy line, and I don't think it's in character at all for Chief to say. Chief asking how long we have to wait is a nice line, because it's exactly what I was thinking. I also wondered why Johnson was being given the hacking doors role, considering it's not in character for him, but seeing that Oni have given him a new hacking device that he can't use properly makes sense for the delay. Johnson also makes a shoehorned in foreshadowing to Cortana by saying Chief should get an AI in his suit, which is fine. It's a bit of an eye roll, but it serves the purpose of establishing to the player that Chief hasn't met Cortana yet, and that's probably why he needs to talk more. Johnson hacking the door takes a full minute to do, and I understand they needed to put in this dialogue there to establish what the mission is, but I didn't need a full page of script to do that, and it hurts this stop-start pacing we've established so far. As soon as the door opens, we get a perfect needle drop to Impend from Halo 2. This starts a trend for this campaign where we get an assortment of music from throughout the Bungie Halo games, and for the most part, they use really well, even if it stops these bonus missions from having their own unique score and feel. It mainly evokes this feeling that you're just back in the world of Halo. It's how you remember it instead of trying to be its own thing or be something new, which seems to be Halo Studios' approach across the board. We clear a few rooms on the Covenant ship, which make great use of different levels of elevation to mix up the gameplay alongside varying weapon selection that never feels old. This campaign adds weapons from across Halo's legacy as well. Notably, we start with the battle rifle from Halo 2. In Combat Evolved, we were treated to both keys and Truth and Reconciliation, which were based inside Covenant ships and featured large docking ports and vehicle bays. Still, they were very square in shape. I find that Meteorite's designs of the Covenant to be more a rounded off look, whether that's the rounded staircases or the architecture of the walkways being circular to walk around with a gap in the middle. It does provide a different perspective and feel to what we'll experience in the main game. I think the big open arenas are fun in an arcadey sense. Still, it doesn't feel like any weapon or particular enemy placements are intentional here, more so just a large quantity to make up for any purposeful design. That is until we get to the top of the deck and find two hunters waiting for us, or on Heroic I found two elites alongside them, and I suppose this will scale depending on difficulty. The hunters being able to follow you back down the narrow pathway you came up makes avoiding their blasts very difficult and a good challenge, as you can either lure them away or fight them in the big open area, but with little chance to mess up or get hit. Past this room, the architecture starts to change colour palette and we see gold linings on the walls, which is a subtle hint as to what's to come as we overlook a starkly different room to anything we've seen prior. The Covenant design is now an ornate white and gold pattern with natural rock formations throughout, almost like little art pieces decorated around the ship. The lights are also now a calmer green colour, and black walkways give these areas a distinctly better read than the shades of purple the previous rooms had. This is because we're meeting a new sub-faction of Covenant with their own aesthetic. However, you'll become more confused at how inconsistently they stick to their own art style, as often it looks like the Covenant had given up and just stuck with purple when they couldn't be bothered to paint everything white and gold, making for a jumbling of the art style that is quite distracting. Wait, did I say Covenant? I meant Halo Studios. Johnson stays up top to snipe with his stanchion while we drop down and go for a firefight. This kicks in the track Covenant Dance from CE, which is fitting. I mean, there's Covenant, so can't really argue there. As we fight our way through the room and up to the second floor, we find a weapons armory at the back, containing the beam rifle Covenant sniper from Halo 2, and also the Brute plasma rifle from Halo 2 as well. The only difference between the plasma rifle from CE and its Brute counterpart is that one is purple and the other is red, and they respectively shoot blue or red plasma when fired. The only reason for including the Brute variant, I think, is to foreshadow the Brute's inclusion later in the story, which I think is neat. Still, due to how every weapon under the sun is thrown at us in these levels, it masks that foreshadowing as just another weapon inclusion without any meaning. I also worry that adding 2 new weapons at once is unnecessary. I mean, even the Needler rifle was added earlier than this and I totally missed it because it wasn't given any kind of emphasis. We're only 10 minutes into the gameplay and apparently players will be bored and wanting a new set of weapons to spice it up. Bearing in mind Combat Evolved only introduced maybe 1 new weapon each level, and that didn't feel like the gameplay was getting stagnant. Blowing their load this soon means we're not going to have as much variety later on. The end of this arena also gives us a set of elites coming through the final door. These elites holding the Needler rifle that we could have obtained earlier, another new weapon to this game not seen since 2011 in Halo Reach. It acts as a precision weapon, but one a bit more casual like the carbine rifle from Halo 2, and it doesn't require the accuracy of a sniper while having the Needler aesthetic. This was personally one of my favourite weapons from Halo Reach, and it was a joy to use again. That goes for all the new weapons. As much as it kind of spoils future remakes by featuring these weapons so early in the series chronology, it does make for a unique experience and a fun sandbox when replaying the game. I think it also serves the purpose of giving more to the main game in Campaign Remix. Campaign Evolved doesn't have a multiplayer, which is insane, but a completely different rabbit hole, so replay value is found through the campaign remixes, a completely non-canon version of the game that applies random gameplay modifiers to the experience and makes for a fun, randomized challenge whenever you want to hop on and play an amalgamous blob of what Halo has been. Gameplay modifiers take the form of collectible skulls found in each level, and I can say I've found all 39 skulls the game has to offer, and the experience of finding them in the levels is great fun. One of these skulls randomizes weapon and enemy placements throughout levels, so you can have Flood on Silent Cartographer or weapons like the beam rifle on Halo. This is why I think all of these new weapons are available in Operation Meteorite levels. They are assets being made for the remix mode that will also help make Meteorite more replayable by having weapons found nowhere else in the game. Enough weapons are missing, however, to make it incredibly suspicious, and I do wonder if some weapons have been held back so that Halo 2 Campaign Evolved will seem more unique and appealing. Only having 2 brute weapons, for example, is quite small considering their appearance in this game, and the lack of Halo Reach weapons like the Plasma Repeater, the DMR, the Plasma Launcher and the Focus Rifle, despite them being more accurate to include in this time period, does feel like they're just being held back for future remakes to have more variety. The next room once again introduces new items in the sandbox to us as we find ourselves in an arena where elites are having a sword fight with energy swords whilst the grunts form a ring around them and watch, which is a great bit of environmental storytelling. It's the best example we've had so far. The entrance to the room also sticks an energy sword rack in front of us, and to our left is some active camouflage, which allowed me to go invisible and watch the fight from closer on, which I'm sure was the intention. This doesn't last long, however, and the fight will naturally begin even if you aren't spotted as the elites run to their ghost vehicles. You'll essentially be stuck in this room with different enemy types flooding in. First it's the Energy Sword Gold elites, then a set of stealth elites before we finally face a wave of Jackal snipers on the top floor. The problem here is the ghosts. They give us vehicles in a location that's so close quarters that it makes the whole thing quite a doddle, because you can just run over or shoot every enemy no matter their class, and it takes away a lot of the challenge of this area. Johnson then uses his hacking device on this glowing bridge. We get an awful chromatic effect placed on top, which will proceed to happen every time you enter a grav lift, and it just looks so garish that I wanted to look away, and I still can't find an option to turn off this effect. Please comment down below if you find it. Across the bridge is a weapons armory, but it's a UNSC one. Chief even says this wasn't in the brief, and he had no idea that human marines had been here before. How the Covenant obtained these weapons will be revealed later. Still, for now we get a chance to gear up with everything from the human weapon arsenal, including the SMG from Halo 2 and all previously established weapons from Combat Evolved. I feel like weapon placements are very important in level design and give you a hint as to what the next room will have in them, but when every weapon is offered to you like this, I have no idea whether what I pick is going to be of any use. What if I pick up a Spanker rocket launcher only for the next room to be tight corridors? At least with the beam rifle placement, it was on a second floor where I could use it to snipe below, but here, with everything on offer, I don't have any feelings on what I should pick other than what my favourites are. I elected to go with the shotgun and sniper rifle, only to be disappointed to see the next room be a massive open space with no verticality or cover, where both a shotgun and sniper rifle are least useful. This room contains elites and jackals, floating in glowing blue pods. However, they look different from the ones we've faced before and have the grotesque appearance of a 343 Industries creation. Yes, these are the designs from Halo 4 and 5 after a drastic art style change, which ever since they have been trying to make canon. Chief theorizes that they may be experiments before Johnson starts complaining and begins cracking open another door. We're back in the purple aesthetic and fighting more Covenant forces in corridors and these circular walkways where my shotgun became a hell of a lot more useful. Entering a big open room, we get our next cutscene.
Are you not impressed with our work here?
I think we've seen enough already.
Oh boy. Okay. Let's start slow. What do we learn from this cutscene? Well, we now know that it's a prophet that owns the ship and is likely conducting these experiments. We also get introduced to the brutes and find out they have some device that can make them rageful.
What they lack in mind, they make up for in muscle. But under our guidance, my guidance, their rage can be controlled.
Okay.
The Prophet also spends a lot of time telling us that the alien races we've been fighting are in fact fighting together. Well, yes, I guessed that already.
Okay.
So the real point of this cutscene is to introduce our main villain, the Prophet of Harmony, and establish the new mechanic where brutes can be turned savage and attack other factions. So how does it do at conveying these key points? Well, the introduction of Harmony, aside from listing off a wiki entry about the Covenant, is pretty good. He relates his experiments to the UNSC experimenting on children to produce the Spartan 2s like Chief. That's a great angle to approach it from. It's a question of whether both sides have overstepped the moral line to win this raging war. This is something that Halo has often questioned in novels and exterior media, whether the Spartans are outsiders because of the inhumane conditions they were raised in, so at least this dilemma is good for Chief and especially Johnson, who is friends with Chief and has seen the humanity he displayed. At least by having the two of them quipping at the beginning, it creates a difference between what John is and what the new breed of Covenant would become. The Brute introduction, however, does such a bad job of establishing the rules with this inhibitor. The Brute walks into frame with glowing red eyes, but passive and calm, with this glowing red thing on his chest seemingly mind controlling him. But then the Prophet pulls out a disc and places it in that empty slot, which changes nothing. The Brute makes a zombie sound from Minecraft, but it seems the same as before. Then, when the cutscene ends and Johnson shoots the disc, it makes the brute lash out. So why is there an inhibitor at all? The brutes work alongside the Covenant like any other species in Halo 2. They didn't need to be controlled. In fact, this glowing target is a downside in every way, and I don't think it makes sense from a story perspective. As a gameplay one, sure, it's a fun gimmick, but I can't even think of how to make it fit with the lore because it just doesn't make sense. Then we have the myriad of other issues with this cutscene. The direction is utterly dreadful. Why are the Covenant just standing in a line shooting? Why is this elite dodging nothing? Why is it that both Johnson and Chief shoot here, but there's no sign that they hit anything or see any bullets impact once shot? Why does Harmony appear at all here and then stop fighting? Why do Johnson and Chief stop shooting and come out from cover at all? Why is it that when we resume back to normal gameplay, they're in an entirely different room from the cutscene and now are miles away from the action?
Okay, Mr. Monologue.
Why does Johnson break the fourth wall here and call him Mr. Monologue? That makes it seem like everything he just said was waffle and we shouldn't pay attention to it, when in fact, it's now the driving thematic conflict of the story. And lastly, where are the hunters? Are they just not part of the Covenant now? I'm so tired. We then get confirmation that this is the first time Johnson has seen a brute. Harmony then says over the intercom to release the chambers, and I looked around to see if any of these 343 elites would come to life. But it didn't happen. We just get more brutes, which weren't in any of the chambers. So what's going on here? Are the brutes experiments too? Did he fuck with their DNA and that's why they need restraint? It would make sense, but then why didn't it have the inhibitor when it first showed up? We fight the Covenant now, accompanied by the brutes, in the circular-shaped room with 2 floors and waves of enemies coming from both, which makes it a very tough fight on Heroic, and I had to use the verticality more for cover than movement. Variety then stutters to a halt as the next 10 minutes are just the same copy-pasted hallways and more lab experiment pods while we face off against the brutes. There's also a cheeky cameo from Craig, the most memorable character from Halo Infinite. This culminates with a massive open arena where we face off against waves of enemies that send us into the next cutscene.
What's your read?
UNSC BattleNet telemetry. Just ahead.
That doesn't seem right. What could it be?
A trap.
Exactly. No way to be sure.
There's a way.
But our objective is that way.
If UNSC soldiers are being held captive, we need to find out.
I'm in. Let's move.
I like this cutscene. I think it should be Johnson wanting to save the Marines while Chief wants to push forward with the mission. Still, considering what Harmony said, I think the goal with this level is to show the difference between who Chief is and what Harmony's creations are. That it's John's humanity that makes him victorious. This is the first time Johnson has gone a whole cutscene without making a joke too, and he's all the better for it, as he comes across much more like the Johnson we know from the other games. This concludes the first mission, and overall I'd say the first half has a lot of dynamic level design and sandbox offerings, while the second half becomes tedious and very same-like with each encounter. Narrative-wise, I'm just confused. Chief and Johnson's goal here is no closer to being reached. Still, we've learned that something sinister is going on in the ship that may take priority by the end of the story, and now we're going on another detour to save some Marines before we get back to the nav data mission we're here for. The dialogue is extremely hit or miss, and the humour is often dialed up higher than a Halo game should ever have, no matter which character is saying it. Some ideas thrown in there are very interesting to explore, but it doesn't look like we're going to get any depth to them outside of their introduction, which is a shame. There are absolutely too many cooks in the kitchen here, and no ideas have been given time to cook properly. So let's dive straight back in with Mission 2, the most dangerous game. Johnson and Chief emerge on a massive biodome within the ship. This is a simulated environment for the Covenant to practice hunting and training within. Now, I don't know how accurate this is to Halo lore, or whether the existence of an entirely different environment within the ship is just ridiculous. Still, from a gameplay standpoint, it does give us a good bit of variety that helps this level in particular stand out from the previous one. And also it was kind of established in the previous level with the decorative art pieces made from natural formations. As we traverse the canyons and get thrown into some firefights, we quickly track the UNSC signal and find a group of Marines pinned down by a Covenant ambush. Suddenly, this all starts to make more sense. The reason we'd found that armory of human-made weapons in the previous level was because the Covenant are snatching people and dropping them into this simulation to train Harmony's experiments and prepare them for battle. Here we meet Williams and her crew of surviving Marines. Despite not having her helmet, we can see from her armour that Williams is an ODST, Orbital Drop Shock Trooper, the closest thing to a Spartan without the experimentation. I'm a massive fan of ODSTs, and I have a very cool ODST shirt you may have seen me wearing in some of my main channel videos. Williams is a character that the gaming community has lambasted for her character writing. I'm not going to go for the simple girl boss accusations and instead look at what's actually written on the page for her character and why it does or doesn't work.
Didn't think we'd ever see any of our own again. I'm Lieutenant Williams, Tiger Company.
From the 92nd Shock Troops Battalion.
One and the same. Honored you've heard of us, Sergeant Major. We certainly know who you are.
The honor's mine, LT. Glad we could help. You don't seem as impressed as the rest of your crew.
No, Sergeant Major, I'm not. Takes more than fancy armor and a good PR campaign to impress me.
So Williams thanks Johnson for helping her squad. It's when she looks over and sees Chief that her demeanour changes and she becomes more hostile. This line about a good PR campaign is a little bit vague, and I wish that as she walked past Chief, she'd mentioned something like, you know, the glassed planet beneath them. There's no doubt that she must have been there for the Covenant to get her, right? If she asked Chief where he was when that planet was being glassed, it would make more sense why she doesn't like him. The PR campaign could be in reference to how Chief doesn't get to decide which missions he goes on, instead of him just being popular. If they went in that direction, then yes, it would raise questions of why Oni didn't send Chief to save the planet, but was allowed to go to this ship. Unfortunately, the game doesn't give us any depth to justify this dislike towards him. I have to judge her based on just not liking how popular Spartans are, and maybe being against human experimentation if we want to try and loop it back into the themes of the previous level. However, Williams herself doesn't actually state that. Since Williams has been on this reserve for a while, she's familiar with the layout and guides Chief and Johnson through the dangerous areas. There is a line before we head into the reserve where Williams hopes we can start burning their worlds for a change, which implies she's more focused on what happened to Promise, giving my theory a bit more credence. The game still throws everything at us, like energy sword elites and jackal snipers in trees from the offset, but it does feel a bit more focused this time round, and not introducing new weapons in every room helps the flow too. The environments are a nice change, with bright open valleys and a warm orange and purple colour palette making the terrain look dangerous, and there's also sand that's been swept away to reveal the ship floor underneath, which is a nice immersive detail. There's some big open areas here. We get to ride a ghost again and defend a door while Johnson unlocks it. It's all very straightforward, and I think that's intentional so you turn your brain off and focus on the enemy encounters. In this level in particular, I was starting to feel fatigued as encounters become overwhelming in their frequency. There's not a lot of story here as we fight our way through the reserve, and despite vehicles being thrown in, it doesn't really spice up the gameplay the way I think the main levels of Combat Evolved do. It makes the open environments feel more like they couldn't think of how players would traverse them, so they made the levels big to create more freedom but less direction or focus. Once out of the hunting reserve, we're back to the purple corridors as we find the Marines that are still being held captive. This reminded me a lot of the Truth and Reconciliation, because the level geometry is beat for beat taken from that level as we rescue the other prisoners. Johnson gives a speech to inspire the Marines, which is in character, and I'm just relieved that they've dropped the jokes nearly entirely, and for this level it feels a lot more tonally like Halo. Williams even comments that she's starting to believe the propaganda, which is only about 10 to 20 minutes after her introduction, so it's not like she's hostile for long in the story. She obviously sees how impressive my gameplay is, that's to say fucking dreadful, and comes round to us being as skilled as she's been told. Now we're back to fighting through Covenant rooms. Honestly, I thought the hunting reserve would be the entire level, so being back here makes it feel less like these are standalone levels and more like just one bland environment with occasional spurts of something unique. We get a room full of Covenant arms, and in the next room a UNSC one. And it's at this point I was sort of questioning if they ran out of creativity with the level design and just gave us every weapon so we could create the fun instead. It's been a long time since I've seen a room with a layout worth mentioning, because they all seem so similar in design language and layout. But alas, there is hope. We exit back out into the hunting preserve and the level becomes interesting again as Williams points out a high value target, a gold elite that had been personally responsible for killing her marines. This target relates to a skull you can get, as throughout the level this elite can be seen stalking you from above. If you shoot the elite on these 3 occasions and break his shield before he retreats through the door, you can find a skull later in the level. However, you never get to have a boss fight with this elite and get revenge, so Williams pointing him out only seems to relate to the skull hint and nothing else comes of it. We fight across more outdoor spaces and then come to this bridge where we need to activate the grav lift after defending it. The reason I mention this is because there's a good bit of environmental storytelling, with a dead marine on the side of the bridge and a battle rifle we can use next to him, which is handy for shooting down the banshees that fly across the bridge. Williams starts to open up, and it's actually the first time she speaks directly to Chief.
Look, Marines like us used to be the heart and soul of the UNSC. Until we started playing second fiddle to soldiers that were built instead of born.
She explains that the reason she's so hostile is that the ODST used to be the poster child of the UNSC. Still, since Spartans have come in, it seems less like anyone can be a hero and more like you should just help the Spartans be the heroes. I'm going to have to defend Williams' character here because so far we've seen her grow and appreciate what Chief is. Now she's able to have a conversation with him and open up about her insecurities, so at least up to this point, I don't have an issue with how this character is written. Chief responds with,
We can't change where we come from. Only what we become.
Alright.
This line feels very much like Master Chief from Halo 4 and Infinite, and with just one line, we get everything he's saying. It shows that Chief isn't just an experiment. He can't help what happened to him, but he hopes his actions to save humanity can make up for that. What a great read of Master Chief's character. Honestly, this interaction is great. No notes here, except for Johnson fucking interrupting it.
Only what we become.
Alright.
Fair enough.
The final cutscene of this level is great too. It's just setting up what the plan is going forward, but the writing is so much stronger. Johnson's jokes actually feel well implemented into his dialogue and feel more like levity than straight up humour. Williams listening to Chief and his commands shows good growth for her character, and now with the Marines being sent to find a way off the ship, we're back to being on our own with Chief and Johnson as we go into the final mission. The Most Dangerous game tells a really strong story and the writing has improved exponentially from the first, but I can't help but feel the gameplay is dropping as a result. This level has variety, going from the Reserve to the Covenant ship. Still, level designs feel very samey, and aside from a few bridge sections, it's mainly just canyons and corridors that are either wide open or super small. It swaps between them enough, but without a change in geometry, enemies, or even more vehicle sections, it feels like we're just flip-flopping between the same 2 places without any reasonable direction on where we're going or if we're getting any closer. We also seem to have dropped a lot of the story from the first mission, and you could probably play this level in isolation and you wouldn't feel lost. I'd almost prefer if this was mission 1 and on an actual planet, and it's when you get to the Covenant ship that we have one level all in the purple environment and then one level in all white and gold with unique weapons and enemies only found on each of the levels. I think for the sake of variety and also just diversity in the level design, it would make more sense to isolate each of the 3 locations they have to their own levels instead of interspersely switching between them throughout all 3. So mission 3 doesn't start with any cutscene, we're just inexplicably back in the white and gold rooms from the ship without any idea how we got here. The following is 20 minutes straight of room to room fighting the same enemies we have for the previous 2. There's no mix-up in gameplay here, it's just more mindless gameplay without any narrative elements in between. So I can't really comment more on it than that. Chief and Johnson do eventually get to the bridge and get the nav data they were looking for. There's another appearance from Harmony, who starts going on about the Great Journey, which has nothing to do with anything that's going on, so I'm not mad that Johnson shoots the screen, then makes another cringy quip.
Sorry. I was getting real tired of hearing him talk.
Although, if said in a less humorous tone, or maybe if he wasn't constantly smiling, I could see it working better. As the data is being extracted, Chief contacts Williams, only to hear her in trouble on the other side, and without any dialogue, Johnson and Chief both give each other a look that tells us they're going to go and help, and that's a nice moment between the two. Also, they kinda have to, because it is their way out. So now we begin our way to the hangar, so that means plenty more rooms of enemies. There is one nice interaction where Johnson says he'll pin a medal on Chief after this.
Chief, when we get out of here, I'll personally pin a medal on your chest and treat you to a night out on the town.
Is that a threat, Sergeant Major?
Just gonna hurt my feelings.
I know it's not in character for him to say that, but it still got a chuckle from me. The timing of it is really strange, however, because it happens while you're in a quiet room, which makes sense, but then the Covenant breaks through the door and starts attacking while the dialogue is still happening, so without subtitles, you might not hear Johnson's response to that. And I've played these missions a few times now, so I know it happens every time. They just needed to hold off on the Covenant appearing for an extra 20 seconds maybe, and it would have allowed more time for that interaction to play out. To get to the hangar, the final step is to take a gondola across, which Halo fans will be all too familiar with, as gondolas were frequently used in both Halo 2 and Halo 4. I personally hated them in both, but especially Halo 4's was unforgiving on Legendary, and the friggin' enemy encounters in that game are terrible, so I wasn't too happy to see a section here, although I am complaining about a lack of gameplay variety, so at least this spices that up, even if it's a challenging and slow mix-up. It's pretty well varied throughout the ride, with snipers on the sides of the room, and then a bridge you pass over the top that will have Covenant and Brutes jump down onto the gondola depending on your difficulty. This small size of the gondola means you don't really want anyone boarding it, or there's little room to breathe, especially charging Brutes. There's a section towards the middle where the power goes out, so you need to hop off the gondola and restart it, which is pretty basic stuff, but at least it requires a bit more thought than the onslaught of rooms we've gone through to get here. There's also some dead Marines around here that will give you access to human weapons for the first time in this section, which is more than useful against the cloaked elites that ambush you at the power switches. Once we get back to Williams, we find her squad posing for a magazine cover and no longer needing our help. This is unfortunately where I have to agree with a lot of the criticism of Williams' character, because this one interaction undoes all of her development from the previous mission.
Spartans aren't the only badasses in the UNSC.
Suddenly, she's back on the defensive and not wanting Chief to get all the glory, to the point where she'll sacrifice her entire squad, completely unnecessarily by the way, to prove that she can be as cool as a Spartan. I thought her whole motivation was that Spartans made her feel less special, but Chief put her mind at rest that he was trying to do good as much as her, no matter his advantage. Surely this sacrifice should be about saving humanity, not just showing off. She throws the device at Chief that was used to control those brutes. I don't know if it's supposed to be a metaphor for controlling our fate or something, but why does the camera linger on it for so long like there's something we need to spot? I've heard theories that the symbol on the top is the Banished logo from Halo Wars 2 and Infinite, and this may hint at why that faction is made to begin with, but I don't think we even know enough about what this thing is or how it works to start implying lore connections. Johnson being so willing to let them die seems a bit strange as well, maybe for an arsehole general, but not the guy who's been joking and smiling all the way through this. Should this not be the moment Johnson's fun-loving persona slips and he gives a genuine damn about this team? After all, he knew Tiger Company by name, and yet he doesn't care for them as people, just as rootin' tootin' hell yeah Marines.
Missions change, Chief. Always do. Now we're giving these Marines a chance to punch back.
Damn right.
it just seems like he's going to move on and never think of them again, which sucks for these people who are about to die. So with that, we transition to the final section, piloting a Covenant Seraph out in space. This is a great section, but I think it's misplaced as the last thing we do. I feel like these missions are totally out of order. We should have had the hunting reserve be on the planet as the first mission. You get this section flying up to the ship, and finally a mission on the ship going through the purple and then gold sections to apprehend the person behind the reserve and its experiments. But either way, the gameplay is pretty much identical to Halo Reach. They even throw in the main theme from Reach, which feels so fitting and matches the mood perfectly. We take out the defences around the ship, ready for our ship to arrive and destroy the Covenant research station. Meanwhile, Williams and her team are lowering the shields so the shot will hit. We then move through a debris field of destroyed UNSC ships, which is an awesome backdrop, but I can't believe the screen has to fade to black to move the ship into position. Like, really? You couldn't find a more seamless way to move us across the screen? That part took me out because it just felt sloppy. As the burden of proof arrives, we have to defend it against waves of kamikaze ships that are trying to slow it down. While this is happening, the Prophet of Harmony radios in to let us know he's escaped and lives to fight another day. No doubt this storyline will be picked up in a Halo 2 remake where we'll meet him again, which is probably why we don't see him in the flesh past his first encounter. With the shields down, the burden of proof fires, destroying the research vessel, and Williams tries to tell us to name a building after her, but doesn't get to finish her sentence.
Appreciate it, Sergeant Major. Name a building after us or something, alright? I was thinking something like...
Which came across, like, unnecessarily funny. Like, this is a character obsessed with her image and being remembered, and yet can't even get time to tell Johnson what her legacy should be before she blows up. What a comedic way to kill her off, and I don't even know how to feel about it. They squandered her character development because they needed a reason for her to die. What a way to write a story. With the ship destroyed, the camera pans up from the planet Promise, mimicking the opening shot of Operation Meteorite and concluding the story. Back on the burden of proof, we don't get to see Chief again, which is anticlimactic to his character. Not even a chance to reflect on the events of the story. Seeing what the Chief and Johnson came here for is an important reveal. However, as this is the stakes the story has been hanging on, speaking with Dr. Halsey, she reveals the nav data to be the location of the Covenant homeworld of High Charity, with a graphic of it on screen and a hard cut to black, as we're thrust back to the main menu? No credits? No time to reflect? Alright then, let's just get the fuck out of here then. The location of High Charity is completely pointless. Humanity never goes there. In Halo 2, the Flood crash there and begin to swarm, and in Halo 3, the Gravemind uses High Charity as a means of travel to get to the Ark, to stop the Prophet of Truth. It's a visually impressive structure and yes, is a Covenant city and the government that falls to the infection, which metaphorically is a great narrative beat. Still, as a reveal for humanity, it doesn't mean anything. Unless Halo 2 Campaign Evolved is going to follow up Chief going through High Charity earlier than in Halo 2, where he'll maybe meet the Prophet of Harmony again, what is the point of this? And by the way, I think that idea would be awful, and I'd rather they follow up on his experiments more than this Covenant homeworld plotline. It makes the ending less of a, oh wow, that was worth the journey, and more of an eyebrow raise and a, huh? Which I doubt was the intention. So now it's time to ask the all-important question. Can Halo Studios make a Halo game? No. Operation Meteorite is the perfect example of Halo Studios' strengths and weaknesses across the board. Halo pumps out more novels than games, and these levels showcase a good understanding of the Halo lore. There are several themes relevant to the franchise that are explored, like the ODST and Spartan rivalry, or the Covenant's experimentation paralleling humanities. The problem is, of course, the way they prioritise their storylines. There is nowhere near the length of a novel, so there's not enough time to explore any of these dilemmas in depth. most are just brought up and never mentioned again, like the Brute Inhibitor or the Prophet's mention of the Great Journey. This, along with High Charity and the glassing of the planet, are just buzzwords that fans will recognise, sure, but they don't play any relevance in the plot. The story, because of this, feels completely disjointed and sloppy. Cutscene direction can't even tell the story well, as the opening cutscenes are so distractingly off-putting and the character arcs between missions 2 and 3 are forgotten entirely just to contrive an ending. The tone is also a mystery to me. I couldn't tell at the best of times whether this was a fun romp through space or a serious mission. The constant quips sure don't help this, as we have a joke from Johnson one second, then a whole squad sacrifice their lives the next, with manipulative sad music that you'll recognise from other, better narratives playing in the background that feel like a grab for cheap sympathy. It's only in Mission 2 that I feel the storytelling is better than passable. There's environmental storytelling throughout, with marine bodies and elites stalking our movements. Williams starts the level hating Spartans and by the end softens and starts listening to Chief. It's also the only mission where Johnson is pushed to the side, so his humour isn't as overwhelming in cutscenes. The sandwiching levels, however, are just a mess of unfinished ideas and hastily put together conclusions. Master Chief himself comes out of this relatively unharmed, but the writers have missed several opportunities to create a real argument about the difference between Spartan 2's and Harmony's experiments. Chief doesn't even appear in the final cutscene, and we don't get a moment to round out his feelings on the story or even know where he is, which is so odd for the main character. Johnson is given the focus, but I can't look at this guy smiling and feel any semblance of the character we know and love. He looks and smiles at the camera, he calls Harmony Mr. Monologue, and even in the main game they added this new legendary ending that has him straight up speaking to the camera. Johnson in the original trilogy did break the fourth wall, but only outside of the game, as he would be the voice of promotional material, like his voice for Firefight in ODST. It's like Halo Studios saw this as an opportunity to bring that humour into his actual character in the game, and it doesn't work at all. I can only hope that in the Halo 2 remake, they get closer to what Halo 2 Anniversary was able to do and breathe life into Johnson without changing his character. Williams undoes her own character arc, which is why I think people got so angry at her existence. It doesn't appear like she grows or listens throughout the story, and the game only makes one effort to make her likeable when she opens up to Chief. Fun fact, however, I replayed this mission again in between writing that segment, and it turns out, if you run fast enough through this level and open the door with Johnson next to you, he has a line of dialogue that replaces Williams, so a good majority of players might not even hear the one line of motivation she gets during their playthrough. Her disapproval of Spartans is also beat for beat Sarah Palmer's character from Halo 4, a character that was even more despised by the community for how much Halo 4 tried to make you like her, despite her putting down Master Chief and antagonising him at every opportunity. Why Halo Studios thought repeating this character trait would work is beyond me, but it sucks that with a stronger finale, it had the potential to break the curse and make sense. Now, let's talk about the gameplay, and compared to Bungie's perfected constructed level design in the main game, these levels stand out massively as a drop in quality. The opening of boarding action has some really unique and diverse level design, which blows its load too soon, as the rooms that follow are just Covenant hallways and rooms through till the end, with a couple of outdoor sections that I thought were pretty good, but even the open sections of the levels feel like there's a linear path to completion, and then that gondola section and space battle at the end are a desperate attempt to make you forget how repetitive everything beforehand was. They have a vast array of new weapons in these levels, and even the new brute enemy type, but none of them feel purposefully placed or thought out ahead of time with consideration as to how they'll affect your experience. They mostly resort to giving you a room full of every weapon in the game, hoping that giving you all this freedom will help you make the levels fun and interesting. It does make replay value or co-op experiences more casual and fun, which again could be the goal of a single player only release that will be looking for a reason players should stick around. Still, it doesn't make any of the levels memorable. I would much rather turn on a skull and add these new weapons into the main campaign and use them with sparing density in much better designed missions. I think they needed much more variety in the level design and environments to spread out over 3 missions. I mean, it's basically the Truth and Reconciliation, but twice as long and then going on for 3 missions instead of 1, which leads to monotonous combat encounters which, yes, are fun because this game has pretty good gunplay, which I do enjoy. Still, it's an endurance test for how many times you can kill the same assortment of enemies in the same environments before you get bored. This makes me worry that Halo Studios don't have any idea what they want to do with Halo. They couldn't tell this tight 3-mission narrative with any focus, gameplay and story-wise. It's just desperately using humour and callbacks to feel as entertaining and Halo as possible. I think it achieves these things if you're looking for random Halo levels to play mindlessly, but that's not high praise for a studio that's been running this franchise for over 15 years. This might be a hot take, but yeah, I think Halo Studios should remake all the old games, because once they've done that, they'll realise they have to make something original, and they'll have had time to use the bonus levels from each of these remakes to test the waters on what they're doing right and wrong. Best case scenario, they figure it out, and the next original game is an improvement from Halo Infinite, and at worst, they'll be creatively bankrupt and Queen Asha Sharma will give Halo to another studio. She did that with Fallout, and I have no doubt that there are studios out there that would make an amazing Halo game. Just not the one we've got.